What's up, guys? Brandon Lilly here with Sorinex, sitting with the man, Richard Sorin, also known as the King. This is going to be called Pop's Corner. We're going to be delving into the mind, the work, and the history of Sorinex through Richard Sorin. And I personally am very, very excited for this opportunity, not only as an appreciation for working here and working with Richard and with the team here, but also understanding that this was the genesis of an idea that began a long, long time ago. So, Richard, welcome, and thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing us to do this.
Well, thank you. This is pretty exciting for me. It's over 38 years that I've been able to absorb the actual evolution of Sorinex and myself.
How long did you have this in mind? Was this always a vision, or was it just a natural progression, one step by one step?
I would say it's closer to a natural progression. The passion I had came so early, the value of strength to me. And I was very mechanical because I was actually put in a situation, being a lone child, that I had to entertain myself. So it was lifting weights and it was being mechanical, building and inventing things.
So who was your original male figure that you looked at and identified as strength? And then what was the first memory you recall of deciding very clearly, I want to go this route?
If I could back up, going a route was more of a following of a passion. I wanted to be around strength. I admired it ever since I was 5 years old. I took my first barbell set, which was a Christmas gift, and it felt like 100 pounds, but it was only probably 10. And I valued that so much that that's what I took into my kindergarten for show and tell. So at 5 years old, I was aware of that was my favorite thing. It didn't just come around instantly. My mother, of all people, took me to the first movie, Hercules, and I was just so amazed what I saw, and I identified with those attributes he had as being so important.
Did you think that it was more of the physical character that you saw, or is it all that he personified?
It was more that what he personified and how he went about it. He in the movie, the strength was there, the body was there, but it's how he applied that strength for the better good, for solving problems, that he had his own machine, which was his body, that he could apply to any situation, and it turns out better for himself and his people. I was so drawn to that.
So at 5 years old, you have this early identity, and it's funny you say that because I can remember very clearly. My uncle was a bodybuilder. He was a football player. He played baseball, but I can remember the stacks of magazines that he had, and it was also a reference. It was a Reg Park, and then there was also the Hercules ads, and then throughout history, it's just always been this mythical hero, kind of gets the girl, saves the day, and all of that appealed to me. And I wonder if that's a constant through people who find this. Is it the positivity, or is it just strictly an ego-driven thing where I want to be the biggest, the strongest, the best looking, or is it the end result, the good that you can do with that?
I think way, way back 40,000 years ago, men were starting to integrate with other tribes and whatever, and it was a commonality that who was the strongest was usually the leader, and that was a very positive thing. And what did they lift? Logs, heavier rocks. Whoever was the most robust was usually the leader of that tribe. So I think it has been ingrained in our spirit to be hunters and gatherers, just naturally.
Sure.
And I think really the value of strength and what you could do with it is a driving force that will be forever. I don't think in times to come that weightlifting, and might be long gone, will be, or training or powerlifting will be much different than it is today as far as equipment and use, because it is ingrained to us to be man against iron and man looking at a barbell and wanting to lift it just because it's saying, no, you can't lift me.
Maybe one step further, the man in the mirror overcoming that obstacle as well, right?
Absolutely. It's not about, you're always going to find someone better.
Sure.
You're always going to be either inspired by someone you think as a hero, or you can be disappointed because maybe they're strong as heck and maybe as a person they're not very good. So it's an evolving thing. And what I first thought about and valued as a child, I still value today. That has been a constant. But I figured that from the skills and gifts I had, I was so drawn to strength. I wanted to figure out how to be around strength and give back to that world.
So as athletics in your life progressed, what was the trail that you took? Was it baseball, basketball, football? What led you into a more serious lifting career, and what athletics did you do along the way?
Well, I was a large child. I was not very athletic because I lived alone. I didn't get to play basketball in the yards with other people. Didn't play football, baseball. So I had my own little world. So I was big, but I couldn't pass the presidential Kennedy's fitness program, and it really hurt me. It really did. So for a quarter a week, I would walk across town, and my friend's brother had a barbell set, so I could for a quarter work out on that barbell set. Well, that all worked real fine until I started getting stronger than they were. So they had to get rid of me.
Sure.
So they said, "Why don't you go out for track?" And I was like, "What's that?" And they go, "Well, you just maybe run." I said, "I can't run." "Well, maybe you're big and strong, so maybe throw the shot put." Well, on that premise, I went out for track, which was the start of my athletic career. And I never really put it together that it was two separate passions. I really enjoyed to throw, but I really enjoyed to lift. And I never made that connection, knowing that the stronger I became, the better I threw.
Sure.
It's such an obvious thing, but it never dawned on me then.
How much science, as far as your training, were you imparting, or was it just from magazines? Was it just by feel? Was it handed down from the guys that you were training with? Where was your knowledge base at this point? Again, and we're talking, 15, 16 years old, or maybe earlier?
No, we're talking 12, 13.
Okay, good.
The first magazines that I still have actually on my shelf, the first one my mother ever brought to me, and I remember Freddie Ortiz, his arms were unbelievable, and I would take wax paper and trace his cover shot, and that would be my little art for the day. So it started so it kind of just melted into my consciousness of what I really cared for, and the more I was drawn to it, just by happenstance we're sitting in this room, because it was literally one turn from a senior on the track team, because they were going to let me go the next day because I couldn't throw the javelin worth a toot.
Right.
But I was walking off the track at 12 to 13 years old, and this senior, who would never speak to a freshman, said to me, "Hey, come over here." And I guess he was talking to me because no one else was there. And when I walked over, he says, "Here, throw this." I didn't even know what the discus was. And I threw it maybe 20 feet, and he goes, "Man, that was good." And I went, "Huh?" And he says, "Well, are you coming back tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I think they're going to cut me. And I guess I'll go back to the cellar and start lifting again."
Yeah.
But no, they gave me a chance. And from that chance, I wound up becoming very proficient at it, which led me into other athletics. But track was my strongest thing. I wrestled and played football. But I didn't have the love for it as I did for lifting, number one,
Sure.
and then track. And then from my background in mechanics, because I was not in college prep courses, I was in industrial arts. So I would love to build. I built my first bench probably when I was 10.
So you were already having this tinkering mind.
I was tinkering to see how I could make it better, or I didn't have the money, so how I would make my own interpretation of what I needed.
Give us a rough idea of what that first bench press looked like.
Oh, I could never forget it because I remember I went to wood shop. I didn't have any upholstery, so I got the prettiest piece of plywood I could, and I stained it about 6 times, then shellacked it, and then I bought angle iron, but I had no way to hold it still, so I would put it on the edge of the fence for my vise, and I would hand saw it with a hacksaw, and then I borrowed my dad's drill. I would drill holes, but because I couldn't weld, it would wobble back and forth. So I got the idea of putting turnbuckles on the corners to hold the bench right. And I looked at what, let's say, York had or other people had. I couldn't afford it. But I said, if I was going to build this thing, how could I make it as good or better?
At 10 years old.
At 10 years old.
That's awesome.
And I have pictures, I'm sure, in our archives of that bench sitting there. And when I lifted it home, the basement was only head height. So at 12, when I deadlifted 400, I could probably only press 60.
Yeah. So
it was
400 deadlift at 12 years old is pretty solid.
But it was all I could do, and I was very well supported by my father, who was not an athletic person, but believed in me.
I think that's something it's 2018. And we have come a long damn way as people. But I think what you just touched on right there is something that's so powerfully important. You just talked about 2 elder males having positive influence. A senior that you had no connection with that took the interest in you to just care. And then also a father who was encouraging, supportive, and believed in you. How much do you think those 2 instances led to today? Because, I mean, they sound, obviously a father's impact is huge. But what if you had walked off that field that day and he had never stopped you?
We would have never been here. Ever.
Yeah.
I'd have been in probably retired machine shop, maybe supervisor. I would live down what they call the shore.
Yeah.
And I would have lived a good life, but this would never have happened if I didn't turn and walk over to him.
I think it's important to state that because a lot of times now, especially, we get this very individualist idea about the world. Like, I have to change the world. I have to do this. And really what I've began to understand, because as you and I have talked and we've talked in this room, it's easy to be an asshole when you're on top. It's easy to be that person, but it's also just as easy to extend that hand. And to me, that is something that I've seen over and over and over again with the Soren family and as well as Sorinex as a business. So I think it's very important to just shove that into the conversation that it is important to lift up and continue on, because if he had let you walk off of there, I don't know how much it would have changed him, but it obviously, look at the lives that you changed just in the room here. It's significant. So we've got the basis of you're already a tinker, you're already making your own things. What did you start to recognize as things could be better, things could be done this way or that? And when did you really start to take notice that maybe you had a knack for this and other people saw that benefit as well?
Well, as a young guy, my father, he was a very hardworking man and very loyal to his job. I even remember him walking one time 5 miles into work in a blizzard just to find out the business was closed, and walking back 5 miles just because he didn't want to miss work. He had that ethic. He would take the only time he had off and take me to places like York Barbell, which he didn't have a big interest, but he took me there. He would take me to Jackson Barbell and let me watch weights being made and barbells being crafted. I loved it. I don't know what he had the patience of Job to do that.
Right.
But he believed in me enough that if that was important to me, or reading a Strength and Health magazine would teach me how to read better, he would buy them.
I think it's really, that's pretty fascinating. How far of a drive are we talking to York for you guys?
190 miles.
So you're talking a 3-hour drive.
Oh, at least, yeah.
Just to watch the production.
Just to go there on a Saturday and watch. I was lucky enough that I had the bug before most of our other people did. So in the golden age of weightlifting, especially at York, I might have been 12 or 13 and might not have gotten the whole idea, but I got to see the people that were the famous ones that are written about today, but I got to see them firsthand. And most people started lifting 16, 17, 18 years old. I had already been there at 12.
Yeah.
I would get on a train. I don't know why they let me do it, but my dad always said, let him go. At 12 years old, I'd get on a train and go to York, Pennsylvania, find a hotel to stay in at 12, and walk through the streets and find the York Barbell and go to the York Diner and sit there with all the greats of weightlifting, because that's where they ate, and listen to the stories, and they talk back and forth. And the bodybuilders and weightlifters, they didn't really get along real well, because it was two different mindsets. But I was always drawn more to the functional end of it. Paul Anderson played a huge part in my life. I just dreamed about being like him, and my mother secretly sent him a letter, and he wrote me.
Wow.
And sent me a picture, which I still have. And actually, I think I have. Oh, I do. That's a nail he bent for me. It's 50-something years ago. But these are things I held close to my heart, which inspired me. Or to have at York the greatest American weightlifter ever, the last person to set a world's record as an American 50 years ago, to set a world's record and find that I was more important to walk across the gym with and take a picture with this little kid than sign for his world's record.
Sure.
That meant the world to me.
So just for the audience, can you clarify who that is?
It was Bob Bednarski, and they called him I think the ninth wonder of the world. He was probably, of the three greatest things I've ever seen in lifting, his world record lift, coming off 42 days off a complete dislocation of his elbow, and in the middle of the worst thunderstorm I've ever heard, he lifted this weight over his head and set the world's record.
I mean, that's one of the things that I can remember very, very plainly. There was a guy named Glenn that trained at our local gym. He was a national level bodybuilder. And I remember 13, 14 years old when I got into the sport, I had been used to that very routine, the dad bod kind of guy working out there. And I'll never forget the day I walked in there and I saw Glenn. And I mean, it was just like, it was a connection that probably you had. I couldn't believe that somebody could look like this. Yeah. And very much like you, he came over and he talked to me, and he could see that I was excited. He could see that I was nervous. But he gave me he put me through a workout, and it was fantastic. And I mean, I went more to the bodybuilding route for a little bit. So you chose to go immediately to the weightlifting. What was the coin toss there for you? What?
I so admired strength, and I lifted in my basement, and then we expanded to a friend had a huge cellar, and we would go out and scrounge all the wood we could, or stop sign, pieces of metal, or anything, and we built a really nice gym. And it turned out where probably 15 or 18 people would train there twice a week, and we called it Cedar Street Boys. And it was really, I mean, there were some fine lifters in there. I mean, amazingly good. But you're talking about the mechanical end. There's things that we still build today through Sorinex that I learned to build in that cellar.
Sure.
Because you had to build things from nothing.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, this is pre-cut. No, we had a pile of wood pieces 2 feet long. What are you going to do with them?
Right.
Or I needed an incline. How am I going to do that? So my next step was huge, because Elizabeth YMCA, it was a Saturday all-day walk, 5-6 miles to Elizabeth, workout, then come back and get a protein shake at the health food store.
Sure.
But the people that were in the gym, Big Dave, well, turned out to be Dave Draper.
Oh.
I didn't know who the heck he was.
Yeah.
But we trained together. Or Anthony DiTillo, who wrote great books on power training and power racks and all this other stuff. That was Tony Baroni. He was the guy in there who we would work out with. And one of the greatest coaches, which was on the Bulgarian Olympic team, Desi Ban, actually they have a site named after him, the tight tan slacks of Deso Ban, and that's a whole story in itself, what that meant.
Yeah.
But being in that gym, it was the most dank, water dripping down the walls. They used surplus paint, green lime paint. It was an oak floor. There was still globe barbells in there. It was a dungeon. And if there was a 6 by 6 inch air vent, and that was the only air that you would stick your face in to get a breath of air. And I got to be pretty close with the people who ran the Elizabeth YMCA. And what happened, the equipment could have been better. So somehow I convinced them that to let me reconstruct some of the pieces. Well, I did it, and it was total war, because as bad as the equipment was, they were used to it.
Sure.
Like that. Even if they had to do a bench press and a half, because they were told to take it off this little narrow bench, when they came back, the bench was wide, it was adjustable. And they literally almost gave me a blanket party over it. I mean, it was that much chaos. And then once they finally got used to the better things, they all were happy. They loved it. And I felt real proud about that.
So that mirrors, I mean, obviously not the construction or the development part, but I see a lot of guys that really kind of cut their teeth on the sport. They have a similar story. They all started in a basement gym or these dungeons. What do you think it is intrinsically about strength and that type of model? What do you think the connection is? Is it just the relevance of a lot of these kids are coming from tough neighborhoods and tough places, and that's where they find themselves, or what do you think that is?
Well, I say the world changes every 5 years. Back then, it was a rite of passage to be the strongest kid in school, or to be, we had when I did get into track, it was so active and so highly competitive. We had the 10 best throwers in the U.S. just in my county. So if you went to the Y on a Saturday and the guy from Union was in there that I was going to be throwing against next week, he would look at me with hate in his eyes and literally leave. Or whoever the biggest squatter was between us would stay. Yeah. It was that intense. It was that important. It seemed up north that it was so much more of a rite of passage to be a strong guy.
I've always seen that kind of divide between the East Coast and the West Coast style.
Yeah.
You know, the East Coast was more of a hood up, kind of head down, keep your mouth shut, and the West Coast was Arnold. Yeah. You know, out on the beach, girls around, and I think it was always a fun underlying competition between the two coasts, and I think I always identified more with the East Coast style. I mean, sure. I grew up in Kentucky, but
I mean, we wondered because we didn't have telephone, pocket phones or anything like that. And Big Dave went to a New Jersey bodybuilding contest, and he disappeared. And everyone went like, "Gee, where is he?" No one knew. And then one guy said, "I think he went to California." And it's literally 50 years later. We were conversing about an order he wanted to place with us, and he goes, "I know you." I went like, "Where the heck would you know me from?" Well, these were the people, the gym rats that were in there, the guys that showed up, like you said, in the gray sweats with the hood up, and it was a different thing. You had to earn your nickname. You weren't just given it. And if you were tough enough to stay and take the abuse by the old guys, maybe they'd reach out to you and say, "Okay, kid, you come back and lift with us."
Well, before we go too far into this, I want to ask a very, very fundamental question that I think will not only clear the air for a lot of people, but also give a direct look into who you are. What is strength? Obviously, there's the physical, but also the emotional, the mental. I want to understand what you feel about all aspects of strength.
Strength to me is pretty simple, and really the code of my life. I have a sign that I look at every day. It's your total physical gift that you have of strength and endurance and whatever, but it's applied or multiplied by resolve. You could be the strongest guy in the world, genetically, but if you do not have the resolve to go to that place when you decide in your heart you want to apply that resolve, and that resolve with your bodily functions is what the end result, the end equation to strength is. I think I would win when I competed in weightlifting and powerlifting, not because I was stronger, because the other person was sure that I would go to a place that they wouldn't go. I would literally die before I'd quit.
Sure.
And with that, you start to believe in yourself, and others start to believe you're going to beat them.
Right.
So if that works, the whole world is set right and it moves on. It's not out. It was always a personal thing. I remembered feeling bad not being able to do a push-up. Now I could do 100.
Yeah.
Or I couldn't do the obstacle course. Then I held a school record at it. And I'm going like, I see value in this resolve that I have, that instead of going out and playing at the lake or doing whatever, or going on a trip, I would be in that gym. Whether there was 100 people, whether I was alone, I'd lift just as hard.
Sure.
Because it was between me and the barbell, not everyone else.
Greatest genetic lifter you've ever seen? No insult to their resolve, just flat out genetics that you think you've ever seen.
I think Olympic weightlifting, probably, as I mentioned, Bob Bednarski. He was hardwired for absolute explosion. We have someone here that over the years I've come in contact with, Rich Williams, who is a true gift of nature.
Sure.
He is. I've seen him do things that are humanly, I would think, impossible. And
example, just for reference.
Let's say one arm clean and press, military press, 138-pound dumbbell 24 times, put it down, get a drink of water, come back within 2-3 minutes, and then press it 25 times with one hand, and just shrug his shoulders and walk away. Or front squat 600 the first time he ever tried. Who does that? I don't know.
But you saw these things.
I've seen every bit of it, and I watched really close.
Yeah.
To sit on the floor with nothing behind his back and with an axle and military press 350, how do you do that?
So to contrast the genetic side, and I think the side I am more interested in is the psyche. Because the genetic side, we can map that. The psychology is something that we can't touch.
But now, when I mention those two people genetically, where it varies, this man Bednarski, he would actually be so into doing what he had to do at all costs, that he would just shake from the adrenaline running through him. He was genetically gifted, but he had that it will kill me before it's going to stop me attitude. And you put those two together, that resolve with that wonderful body configuration he had, that's how he could lift world's records. That's why at 240 he could outlift anyone that was a super heavyweight. Then you're balancing the best of both worlds and coming out with just a one in a several million person.
At this point in time, I feel like this is something that's needed because, as we've talked before, if you forget your past, you're going to fail forward, right? And I think a lot of times in this, again, this immediate look at me, instant gratification kind of world, we don't need the past, or we think we don't need the past. Where do you place Terry in his scope of the sport or the sports world of strength, as well as you? I mean, you guys have championed the sport probably as much as two people in the world.
Well, what they said, what is past is prologue. If you know human beings have not really changed that much over 40,000 years. So what works 40 years ago is probably going to work now. So if you look back into the history, as Terry did, of where it all started. What was the mindset? What was the design? What were the great things done that could be compared to people now? Terry looked at that from day one. He inspired me when I first read and found out I had a gift in 1965. He wrote 2 articles on the Mighty Mitts, Strong Hands. Now, people told me I had strong hands, but I had no idea about it. But he took the time to sit down and show pictures of the greatest strength athletes in hand strength so you could compare and learn that where you fell in that continuum. Terry went all over the world to find the closest person to the actual story. He would seek them out and find out what was the story of Hackenschmidt inventing the squat, or all these people. He tried to narrow them down and preserve that gift for the people that are coming. If you're not just plunked down on this earth today and here I am, I'm great. No, you're distilled from many years of your parents, from your experiences, from your triumphs, good and bad. And if you don't have something to look back on, I think every day our museum gets better because people are starting to get that link, which Terry did. Terry linked the past with the future, and he vacillated back and forth with both groups, the strongman of today, and he knew everything about the strongman of yesterday. And when you link that together, then you have a history. And when you have a history, you have direction. And when you have direction, you go places, because it's a guided path, not just let's go out and fight today. Great. What are you going to get done? Nothing.
Right.
But if you know A, B, C, and you're marching forward, I'll guarantee you in 50 years after I'm long gone, they still will have barbells, power racks, and be doing deadlift, squat, and whatever. It might be the most efficient, safe, best way to do it, but they will be doing that after I'm long gone. So you're talking about something that has run from the late 1800s to it's 120 years of the same thing. So we have bought in as humans to do these things of strength.
Yeah.
The physicality of it and what it looks like. You're not going to press a button and a wheel goes around and you get stronger. I don't think people are wired to want that. They want that competition of me against iron, or me seeing that there's more weights on that bar today for myself personally, because I am getting better in some aspects. Terry, with his love for historical strength, you noticed when the World's Strongest Man and the Arnolds came about, which we became involved with him, he highlighted the lifting of stones, the carrying of heavy yokes like logs, lifting logs over their head, things that were everyone, whether they lifted or not, could identify with. Wow, that guy's strong.
Sure.
And if that's the pinnacle of strength, then you know where you fall as a man. I'm weak because I can't lift it, or I'm strong because I'm pretty close to where they are.
Right.
You know, it gives you direction.
So you have this appreciation for learning and applying and building forward. So where does it take off from? I'm reestablishing what we've got here at the Cedar Valley Street. Was that the
Cedar Street Boys? Yeah.
So you're there, and then you move on to the YMCA, and you're evolving this equipment. When do you take the first step to create your own? What is the first piece of equipment that you created as an idea of maybe this is going to be something? We talked about the bench press at 10. How old were you when you thought this could actually be something more?
I think back, as I'm saying, in the early formative years when my parents worked very hard, and I was really told, you do the cooking, cleaning, and you're at home by yourself and don't leave the yard. So that was my world. So I built weightlifting platforms. I worked out behind the fence, which was right next to the railroad tracks, and I came up with the devices out of wood that were very unique, but they served a safe purpose to me where I could lift. And they're sitting in steel right now in our gym. When I first came to South Carolina, I thought everyone in the world lifted because I did. And
Sure.
we had a 3-platform gym in a guy's basement. We were pretty far ahead of the bubble. Well, when I came to South Carolina, no one lifted. There was no weight machines. There was not a weight program. Nothing. So I started to dig in, and I started. I was set up the first gym at the university. I convinced them to give me enough wood to build a gym, power racks underneath the athletic cafeteria, which we all started to use.
So how old were you at this time?
When I came to Carolina, I was still just turned 18 probably.
So you're coming here to school.
Yeah.
And you're coming here full student load.
Yep.
And then extracurricular, you're building these facilities for the university,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah, and and we had luck with it because they started. I don't know how I got to do it, but I taught a class at the university, and I wasn't certified, but it was P186, which was weightlifting. And to this day, so many people that took those classes still come back and say, I can't believe all I learned. And I remember when George Friend squatted 856 and a half because that was on our final exam. And and I'm going, you remember this almost 50 years ago?
Sure.
So it impacted even the average guy's concept of strength and learning that being strong is a helpful thing. It's a tool that you have that you could apply, or you could multiply yourself by being strong. If you're a strong-looking policeman, you don't have to draw your gun. They're not going to test you. But if you're not, you might have to kill somebody to protect your own self.
Sure.
First of all. So it's when you become aware of the value of strength, then you see that it's okay to sweat and suffer, and it's a badge of honor that you're going to shed blood and you're going to get sick and you're going to throw up and you're going to be having stitches or whatever in you over the years, but it's worth it.
I think it's fascinating to hear that kind of evolution. What I want to hear from you right now is the emotion or the connection or maybe even the catalyst that you felt the first time you saw that arc with a welder.
I was a school teacher, and I always wanted to involve people. And I worked with elementary kids, so they wanted a playground, and all the parents got together, and they wanted to just pay for it and be done with it. I said no. I said let's all together, parents and kids, and with my help, let's build a playground because then it becomes theirs.
Sure.
Well, we all got together and built that playground, and it was the best thing going. And we had wherever we had problems, instead of sitting there and hollering at the kids, I would try to make alternate changes to correct these problems. And Bert, my son Bert, he goes, Dad, you need to tell people about the tire in the bell in the tire. And for example, everyone was happily playing on the equipment that they built, but everyone would throw rocks at each other because it was a terrible piece of ground, and everyone was getting detention and all this other stuff. So finally I said, wait a minute, let me hang a tire up with a cowbell in it, and the kids were able to throw all the rocks they wanted at that cowbell. And they pelted that thing nonstop every day. But what did they learn to do? Not throw rocks at each other.
Sure.
They learned how to maybe play baseball, learn how to sling a rock and hit that bell 5 times in a row, and there was not a single rock to fall on in that playground anymore. Rocks were at a premium. So it's how you put something forth to somebody to make them or allow them to see value in it. It's a thread that has gone through my whole life. It's so easy for me to look at something, and you said before, well, when did you start? Selectorized plates really weren't around. Mm. There were no wheels on equipment there was no storage on any equipment. Everything was single use. Everything was narrow. Everything, all these, and there were barbells and weights.
Yeah.
Same as they are today, and some of them were even better. But all this other stuff, I had the passion, and it was so easy for me to look at that and say, I can make that better. I can make that where a long-armed fella is going to have an easier time to get the bar in a proper position to bench.
So I want to go out on a limb here, but I think a lot of times I looked at you as an engineer, as a businessman. What I'm gathering today is that you're an artist. Do you see yourself in that way? Because I think it's an artist's place to look at the normal and make it better for the world around them in some way. I mean, I would definitely identify you as that, but
I look at things not for what they are, but what they can be.
mm-hmm.
And that's things, machines, people. I could see greatness in you that you've not yet found, but I could see it.
Thank you.
You know, and that gift shouldn't be wasted. So as an artist, it comes to me very easily. It comes to me at a different level than most see things.
Sure.
I don't look at a cup as a cup. I might look at it as a hearing. I could rip the bottom out and put it here, and I could hear better.
Sure.
Or I'll go into some of the offices, and I'll think of something. All right, I have to create a weapon right now. And I go through the trash can, I find this, and I go over here, get a cardboard tube. Now I made a blowgun. All within that room made out of things that were not designed to be weapons. So you have to think out of the box a lot. And I finally thought, am I just a builder guy? Or I think it's really the artistic end of it, the recreation of something into something better. And once it's done, that satisfies my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to move on to something else because I'm sure in my mind that it's something better and that others will benefit from it.
So you do actually have that moment where you put the period on the sentence, so to say, is you're looking at a piece of equipment that you've worked on, you've slaved over to build and create, and now it's done. You're able to wash your hands of it, and then, or do you come back to it maybe the next time you work out on it? Are you always continuously looking to improve, or do you ever have that moment where you think this is as good as I can make it?
When I decide to do something, I typically put everything I have into it, and it usually comes in a short period of time. So if I concentrate on any given project or something I have, I could get it from an idea to 95% within a day or two, and then very quickly come up with all the different ways, and maybe some of them in later production will be used or not used, but I like to have the first piece or prototype I make be able to do everything, and then we could always trim it down if it's not needed. But once I get to that point where this is right and this is done, period, and no one's ever asked me that, period, and I move on. And I don't know if Picasso would be a great fence painter, but he sure could make one picture perfect and then move on to the next.
Absolutely.
That's the difference of what I see as being an artist is.
Well, I think it's also as an artist, and I use that term with a great deal of respect, is that at some point you have to put it out there to be judged, and I think that's one of the things that's probably most undervalued but most courageous about an artist or someone like yourself that's creating something. Like you said, instinctively you produce these things to be better, but they were immediately rejected until there was some point of acceptance. And I think from an artistic standpoint, that's what it is. The art should push the culture forward, and then maybe the acceptance comes up to behind it.
If the ground is fertile.
Yeah.
And I have countless drawings of things that in my mind were thought completely through, and they're ready.
Uh-huh.
But the times were not ready. The people were not ready. They didn't understand it like I easily could understand it, But for them to bridge that gap, they go, no, I don't think a wide bench, because they've never tried it or used it.
Sure.
But once they did, I know in my mind that if I come up with something, that the chances of it working in that arena of strength equipment is so very high, because I've been part of it. I know the history of it. I've competed in it. I love it. I know I've been a teacher. All these things are telling me that if I finish this piece, it's going to make training and strength perhaps better.
Sure.
It's a high probability in my mind it's going to work. But if you have to get 10 people together, that one doesn't know how to weld, or one doesn't never lifted a weight, how are you going to design something when it's a bunch of dissimilar people trying to come up with something that's going to help you, and you're an expert?
Right.
How are you going to do that?
Well, I think there's ingenuity, and then there's reflection, and I think we have a lot of really smart people in the strength and conditioning world that are taking, like you say, concepts that you understand. You're really not going to make this much better than what it has always been. You can make updates and some changes to it, but where do you stack the creation aspect of it versus the improvement aspect of it, like from an originator? When you're creating a piece of equipment versus improving one, how does your mind work different, or is it the same process?
I never really reflected on that. To me, I almost, if you could liken to think about a pack of cards. Well, they're cards, and they have pictures on them and numbers, and some people only take it that far. And if you throw them on the ground, the cards are there, but they're nothing more than a stack of cards. Now, if someone picks the cards up and starts putting them in suits, numerically, and all that, all of a sudden, you're getting order. You're getting something that is very convenient to use. People are understanding that after the jack, the queen comes next, and even better is the king. And then from that same pack of cards that have just been thrown on the ground, there's somebody that decides, I could do something with this. And then all of a sudden they start inventing card games and solitaire. And that same pack of cards has gained a whole new dimension to it. It's seeing those things that those other people don't readily see right off. Because some of the things, let's say we've come up with here, or I've come up with, are so simple, but it's never been considered or thought that this could be combined with this, and all of a sudden it's a better thing. People, they're too used to being hand-fed or making do. I never made do. I want to always have it better, or to soothe my soul that it's as good as it could be.
How do you soothe that? I mean, I kind of see you. Restless has been a word that I've used to describe myself in trying to be able to convey words on paper. Like, I love to write. How do you soothe that restlessness that you have, or that quiet the mind, I say?
It's so hard, and it comes just like bad misfortune. It doesn't come at a time when you're ready or you expect it. Some of the best pieces I've ever come up with are written on the backs of napkins. One was on a barf bag in a plane flying back from California, but I had to get it out. I was thinking in that area, and my mind was just so buzzing. I couldn't wait till I got back to write it down. I had to do it then. And I still have that original drawing that has sold many pieces of equipment from it, but I had to get it out.
Sure.
And a lot of people didn't get it, but the really, really smart ones that could apply how they get stronger to something that's going to help them scooped it right up.
So we've established the longevity, the appreciation, and the creativity. When did you get in your mind that this is going to be, Sorinex was going to be the evolution of who you became? When you were going to walk away from your teaching and you were going to decide to put it all in here?
I knew that the things I truly love, I will sacrifice for. And I took time away from, let's say, my family to scratch that need of learning how to weld, so I could control my. I didn't have to run down the street and ask Mr. Rusty to weld this piece for me. I taught myself how to weld.
Sure.
In the carport. The I had a mind blank right there.
Sure.
Give me a prompt.
Just talking about the evolution of how you decided that I'm going to go from a teacher.
Yes.
To
Okay.
this. What was the genesis?
And as I said, I would come home from school every day, and this man would walk down the street who was a welder for Floor Daniels, the largest construction company in the world, and he would come over just gruff and rough and say, "Hey, you need to do this." "I don't want to do that." "You need to do this." And when you do a job, you take half the money and you put it into the bank, and the other half you buy a tool with. And each time he would come up, he would tell me what tool to buy. He taught me how to weld, and I'd lay out there on that November out on the carport and welding, and all of a sudden it started to build on itself. And the teaching had to go. I worked 60, 70 hours a week, which did not help my family life because I had none. I would still work school, work till dark, building playgrounds and weightlifting equipment, and then I would work out from 9 to 10 at night, get dinner, go to sleep, and then get up because I could make a few extra dollars by taking bus duty in the morning.
Sure.
That was no life. It was what I had the energy and passion to do, but it was not a life that I could sustain. So, prompted by others, they told me I had a gift, so I left teaching, and I said, "Gee, I'm gonna believe in myself and do this because again, it's going to take me back closer to these people I so admire in strength." It wasn't a financial decision. It never was. It was never about the money. It was about I had something that I had to get out of me, and this was the vehicle to do it with.
What do you say to young people who maybe have a passion, whether it be for coaching, whether it be for lifting, whether it be for creation? Is it worth it? Is it worth that? Is it worth those 60 to 70 hour weeks where everything seems to fall apart? And maybe it reconciles and maybe it doesn't, but do you encourage them, or do you say maybe there's a better way?
I so encourage them to do what their heart tells them to do to the fullest. Not just dabble with it, but go for it. And it's not really the gold ring at the end of the road, which sometimes I did think that. But it was the grand ride taken going there. The people I met, the opportunities I had, the gifts that people freely gave me to a kid. But they gave me something that I felt obligated to pass on. And I could always tell when I was a teacher the look in a child's eyes where he was going to be in 20 years. If they have that look, they're going to be something to contend with.
Sure.
And if I could pass on through inspiration or coaching, I live again. I live again through them. I'm not strong anymore because I've gone through a lot of things as far as medical things with arthritis and a severe wreck. And yeah, I'm happy to deadlift 300. Is it good enough? Well, all things considered, yes. But when I see little 9, 10-year-old kids coming in and they want to lift and I coach them and they get better, I win again. I'm living again. So when you keep it alive through others and pass it on, you live.
That's what money can't touch, and I think that's what a lot of people have lost. Is that I'm moved by listening to you talk today, and clearly, seeing it's inspiring to me, and I think one of the things that needs to be shared is that it's just I've seen it, I've been around it, but to hear you say it and to feel it, it's a really powerful thing. Excuse me. But I'm very grateful that that you're sharing this, and I think people need to hear it. So we've gotten past the fear. You're doing it. What was the first paycheck that you got from this? Well,
Lee. I did start out while I was teaching. I would put a list in all the bathrooms of things that I could do. So I started my own little mini construction company, and I had a book that would tell me how to do these things that I've just sold myself to do.
right.
Well, I moved from that to the playgrounds that I mentioned all the kids were part of. I loved that. And then when my true love was weightlifting. Every single child in the school from kindergarten on up lifted weights. And it was a joy to my heart. But the lifting, the lifting was really first and foremost. So when I started pushing on that, everything just galvanized. What other part of your?
Just your first client.
My first client. It started because I was included in the state manual for that playground I built. And people started saying, well, why? This is a whole new thing. And it was introduced into the state teaching manual of trying to get your students involved with the playgrounds. So people started recognizing me as being able to construct things. And they say it was big, black, and would last forever because I only had one color paint, and I always made everything super strong. Yeah, and probably the first paychecks were, I remember long ago, it was in my garage. I refitted and updated University of South Carolina, the first weight room they ever had. I built, and they trusted me enough to do it, and I did it, and I took another step forward, and I had a lot of people that believed in me and bought from me, and really it started getting more steam behind it, and really probably the first giant step moving forward quite a bit was when I decided that it would be all in. I mean, from not eating to selling my home to doing whatever it took to finance these jobs. To get, as I remember, 1987, doing the first super room, which was University of Kentucky.
I know that room.
And that was, if anyone could ask me, the hardest and greatest moment of my life in the arena of, other than a father and a grandfather, was that. I did the impossible with people who believed in doing it with me.
So I've heard a few of these stories. I've heard of the tonnage that was lugged to meet the deadline. Why don't you expound upon that a little bit? How much was it? How hard was it? And did you ever think about going back and just saying this is crazy?
I wanted to do the job.
Now this is 87.
This is 87.
And you're how old?
37 years old.
Okay, so roughly the same age as me right now.
Yeah. And I didn't have much of anything, and I had this opportunity. I found out about an opportunity to do this weight room, and I was so hard-headed, it was already decided that room wasn't going to anyone else but another vendor.
Sure.
But I drove up there and met with the coach and demanded the right to bid because it was an open bid, and long story short, I was awarded the bid, and the bid was made that every specific piece had to be done a certain way or I would lose everything. Well,
so they were betting against you.
They were betting against because it wasn't supposed to be.
Sure.
So our people were working 60 to 70 hours a week.
How many people did you have at that time?
Oh, probably a dozen.
Okay.
And I had a roommate that we weren't supposed to find the upholstery, but I did. We weren't supposed to be able to get credit to get a certain kind of handles. We did. We weren't supposed to get this special order of paint. We did. I didn't have any money, so I sold my house to be able to fund the project.
So you were literally all in.
I was all in. I had nothing else, and I would wait till 10 o'clock at night where the kid down the street would hang a bag of chicken because he worked in like a Kentucky Fried Chicken place, and anything that was left over was my food for the day. Now, if there was nothing left over, I didn't eat till the next day. But it was that tight. I was given a plane ticket by the by a ticket agent by Delta to get me up to the job for the final bid opening. They gave me a ticket. I was such a sorry sack that they felt sorry and gave me a free ticket. So my guys worked unbelievable hours. My roommate spent an entire weekend, nonstop, a weekend upholstering 300 pieces of equipment in my garage. And we packed everything up. We hauled it up there. Guys going on now 100 hours work a week. Drove 404 miles, unloaded the equipment. We carried 29,000 pounds of dumbbells in July across a football field with the sprinklers on, carrying 170-pound dumbbells.
Sure.
We had 31,000 pounds of weight of barbells there in one room. The odds of us pulling it off were impossible. We had literally half the crew was left at the end of the install. The rest of them were just laying in a cool room because they couldn't go anymore. I saw guys literally fall to their knees and say, Cap, I can't go no more. And I said, okay. But we finished, and the next morning they were cutting the ribbon, and the athletic director walked up to the coach, who wasn't real friendly with me because I wasn't supposed to get the job.
Sure.
And I was bleeding. I had a white shirt on. There was blood dripping down the side of my shirt because a stack of dumbbells had fallen on me. But didn't have time to bleed, so we went on with it. So I was standing there, and remember that blood dripping down my side, and the athletic director walked up. He goes, "It's not done, is it?" Because they weren't going to pay me. And the coach looked at him. He goes, "It's done." So from there, we started off on our grand journey, being trusted to do such rooms like that.
Sure. Did you ever look at yourself? I mean, I've had some things, whether you're building a house or, you're rebuilding a truck. There's always that point where you think, what have I gotten myself into? The renovation that goes wrong or whatever. Did you ever feel that? Or when you were loading up that truck to come up to Kentucky and to do the work, did you ever think, man, are we going to be able to make it?
There was self-doubt, but there was such belief in each other, and somehow my guys believed in me enough they would follow me into anything. I received a call from a youngster that I raised up in lifting and working for me. Later on I found out that it was his voice, but I received a call that said, "Watch out, they're going to put you out of business today." Click. Well, back in that day, there were people like hitmen.
Sure.
And sure enough, that day, I had to fight for my life because if I was injured and was in the hospital, I couldn't make that truck get loaded or do the delivery on time. I would have lost everything. I would have been done and gone. So literally had to fight for my life, and warned by someone that I had taken care of in an earlier time. Literally, you don't think that was a little bit unsettling? Have to fight a hired hit guy?
Yeah.
But that's how it was back in the day. Honest to goodness.
So do you think that shied you away? I mean, it even for a moment, do you think it shied you away, or did you think, we talk about resolve, do you think it just cemented that, no, I'm going all in?
Not a bit, because when the people found out that their plan didn't work, they all bought guns to protect themselves from me. Because I'm not going to give up.
Sure.
You have to kill me to beat me.
So you've had the success at UK. Obviously, that is a jumping point to a lot more. When did you get the idea that this was going to accelerate and become anything close to what it has become?
When I finished that, I thought I gave everything we humanly could. Every piece was custom made.
Has a gym that you've installed or built matched that one in your mind or in your heart?
Not by any means in effort or impossibility to come through, but a year later, or maybe a little bit over a year later, another school, a great school, came to us, University of Tennessee, with a brilliant coach, Bruno Paletto, and he says, I want a room just like Kentucky, but better. And I said, Coach, I did everything within my power to make that the best thing I could ever do. He says, I want it bigger and I want it better. And I said, I will do that. And even to this day, when we're sitting aside and he has his own business that thrives, and I consider him a brilliant person. He was president of the NSCA, and he told me, I went with you because I knew you would do something that would make me famous.
Sure.
Because with a good coach and great equipment,
yeah,
it turns out. So I went ahead, and that room, when we sit aside sometimes, and we'll meet from time to time over the years, he said that was the greatest room ever built. And I kind of go, yeah. It had things in there that he demanded from me things that didn't exist. And I had to come up with how to do it in steel. He had the concept that I want something to do this, now you do it. And I believe in you and don't let me down.
Along with that innovation or that kind of cutting edge, and knowing that every coach that calls is going to say, I want a better room than, I think it's an arms race, not only from the ability to recruit, the ability to perform. Do you ever hold any aces, on a piece of equipment that, when that coach calls or the right coach calls and says, hey, I want this, but I want bigger and I want more? Do you have those things that you throw at them and be like, look, I think this could be really great. Nobody else has it?
That's a turn on for me. The higher level of challenge, the higher level of the coach's ability to understand what he's getting is the catalyst that turns me on. You come up to me and say, I want the best weight room in the country for a college. Blank check, you do it. I'll blow their doors off, because that is the one chance to run with the ball the way I would. Do it the way you want to do it. And I'll believe in you enough that our program will be better. Yeah, that would be the ultimate turn on to me.
Have you faced anything that you just said, there's no way?
I've faced people that didn't get the whole idea. Maybe they were in coaching because they wanted to be famous, not help the kids.
Sure.
Or they had an idea for something, or they had a power trip saying, you're going to do it this way. But if you stand your ground and say, I'll do it that way, but you're going to sign off the responsibility if it doesn't turn out. You're not allowing me to be creative. If you come to me as a specialist, and as a specialist, I'm going to do something the next step higher, I'll stand behind that. But there's other people that either they're just there to get a paycheck, or there just to do the minimal, or they're not really in the lifting, but they're in the condition. That's all okay, and that's how the stratus of people all over the world lie. There's some at the top, there's some at the bottom, and the great middle is what you're dealing with. And I've always strived to give the look on that coach's face when they go, I believe in that son of a gun, and look what I got. That look is worth all the effort. It's worth all the hours up, all the extra things that you didn't have to do, but you did because it mattered. It mattered to you, to the company, to me as an artist in iron and steel, to get it where they're going to go, wow, this is special.
So having that mindset and that growth potential that you've shared and talked about as the company grew and as people came under roof, and then eventually, Bert's now taking charge. How does it feel? One, I know you're still here, but do you still feel as connected, or do you feel like Bert is now starting to put his stamp and legacy on that? And where do you see the company going, and where do you see, what is Sorinex?
Bert had a choice in his life to really, as with my dad, I would support him in doing anything. I tried to put forth the things I loved and that I had a gift for in front of Bert in a way that he would be drawn to it. And he was. He looks at lifting in a different way than I do. I don't want Bert to be me, nor do I want me to be him. But he brings so much, the two of us together bring so much to the table that he understands the day and time now of what training needs are. He knows the coaches well. I would stand out in the rain for an hour before they would allow me in because I was no one. No one knew me. I was some guy building weight equipment. But now Bert, backed by 38 years of our company, is welcome anywhere.
Sure.
He has gifts in places that I never had. And I'm so proud to be here still, not gone. And the continuance, just like Terry did with the continuance of the history of weightlifting to modern day strongman, where I started at 12 and 13 years old, it's run till now I'm 68, but Bert has been around actively for 25 years of that, learning from me, learning from himself, fine honing designs, meeting people. He loves to travel. He's a people person. It all makes us better. But I think his heart and the people that work for us, their heart's in the right place. They want to be here. They want to do these things or be part of something great or legendary. And I see that every day in Bert becoming stronger. I'm not afraid anymore. The only thing I was afraid of is letting others down. I could hack the rest of it.
Sure.
I could make it. But now we have 100 people here that depend on us making the right decisions, coming up with things that will make the strength world seek us out. I look at Bert and go, heck yeah, it's there, it's strong, it's viable, and us together, or the people we have now, we could do anything.
I want to talk about pride for a second, and I want to keep Bert in mind, but I want to ask you the question that I think every son wants the answer to. Did you think you made your dad proud?
I think he knows that.
Well, no, I mean, did you make your father proud?
I think I did, but I wasn't aware at that age. When he passed, I was 30. Even at 30, I didn't understand the overwhelming gift that he gave me, the opportunities that he bent over backwards and never asked for a thing, that I just took and ran with passion, but he made that happen. He made the opportunities available for me to grow.
Are you proud? Are you proud of Richard Soren?
I always could be better.
But are you proud of where you've come, of what you've created?
I think I've done more than I expected I could. If that's being proud, yes.
So moving forward with all that we are, what is the magnum opus of your vision? What do you if you could foresee the next 20, 30 years, assuming that you're with us in that time, where do you want to see us go?
I want to see my grandson, who I work out with, and now he's coaching other little kids at 6.
Yeah.
I want to see him as creative and as good as he can be if he so wishes. I want him to take care of his dad
Right.
like I took care of Bert. And I want to see Josh's kids here and involved in our world. I want to see him being there, helping run the entire operation at the highest level. Or any people here are part of my extended family. I was an only child. I had no brothers and sisters.
Sure.
Now I have 100 of dedication, of passion, of getting the right people together to become more than the separate parts. That is what I see for the future. Where this goes, it's not about money. There's not enough room in that grave for much more than me. But to be excited to see about the people I deal with every day, from what was started 38 years ago, where they're going to go, the adventures they're going to be on, the things they're going to have to make their world and their kids' world better. That's what I'm so excited about, because we have the means to do that.
That's Sorinex.
That's Sorinex, yeah.